Hey, you guys, gals, and bums. Welcome back to A Few Bad Men. Today, the boss got the scoop, the straight dope, the skinny, on the Shapiro Brothers. All right, I talked about them in Murder Incorporated 1 video. Now we know they went to war with the Reles mob and lost the throne to Brownsville. Well, today, we're going to go into depth about the boys who ran Brownsville before the combination. There were 3 Shapiros. I only covered 2 of them, Meyer and Irvin, in the Murder Incorporated video, but this is the full story. All right, so before we get started, if you're new here, you want to make your bones, you want to join the gang, you got to bump off that subscribe button. All right, it's the first thing. You got to break that thumb, and you got to ring that bell. All right, those are the 3 things you got to do to join the gang. Okay, now let's get into it. Joseph and Anna Shapiro were Russian immigrants who moved to the U.S. sometime before Irvin, the oldest child, was born in 1906. Then came Meyer in 1908, Rose in 1911, and a set of twins, one boy, William, one girl, Mary, in 1913. Their father, Joseph, was a respectable man who never broke a law in his life. But Joseph, his wife, and his daughters watched the boys grow up to be seduced by the streets, and ultimately, all 3 brothers would be murdered in them. Growing up, the Shapiros were not poor by East New York standards. They had a small shop that provided them with the necessities they needed and even a few luxuries. The boys attended PS 84, and Meyer was said to be a smart kid, and by the 8th grade, he had caught up to his older brother Irvin by being skipped 2 grades. It was around this time that the boys changed. They became bullies. They bullied their classmates, and they would beat up kids who defied them. The 8th grade would be the last grade for the brothers. They left school after starting a free-for-all melee in which a teacher was beaten badly. The boy's father was upset about the school incident, but when they came to him with $6 each, he was relieved. The boys told him they had gotten jobs as office boys in Manhattan. But little sister Rose smelled a rat. She noticed that the boys had a lot more money than what they were giving to their father, so she decided to follow him one day. She found out the boys didn't have office jobs. They were running crap games behind a parking garage. Later on, Irvin made a few bucks in the ring. He won a few fights at a fight club, and when he knocked out one of the best boxers they had, he decided to go pro. He even hired himself a manager. Irvin had visions of becoming a champ. He had an okay career in the ring, but his greatest strength was hitting his opponent's fist with his chin. After one particularly bad loss, he decided to join his brother Meyer, who was already making a name for himself in the streets. He, like Irvin, had tried boxing, but he never went past amateur. While Irvin was in the ring, Meyer had started to steal packages from trucks. And after he hung his gloves up, Irvin joined him. For the first time, the 2 were making some good money. Soon, Meyer was recruited by a poultry trust and was paid $1,500 to be muscle. Now, the legend has it that Meyer Shapiro was fearless when it came to a gun. He would rush a guy who had a gun on him, but he was petrified of knives. This may stem from the night of May 14th, 1928. Meyer was found semi-conscious on the sidewalk at Hinsdale and Glenmore Avenue. He was taken to the hospital with a deep knife wound to the stomach. Meyer was questioned, but he had nothing to give to the police. But somebody wanted 23-year-old Meyer gone, because he was only out of the hospital for a few weeks when he was standing on the corner of Sutter and Williams Avenue when shots rang out. A black taxi rolled by with a man hanging out the back firing a revolver. 5 shots were fired. 1 hit Meyer in the belly, and he was taken back to the hospital in critical condition. The police were baffled. Meyer had no police record, yet was sticking to the gangster code. Meyer put together a crew of tough gangsters, including Irving, Joey Silvers, and Samuel Cohen. In August of 1928, Meyer went to the poultry shop of Joseph Hassan France and told him whose chickens he should be buying, and if he didn't do what was right, he was going to get an apple, meaning a bomb. On August 19, 1928, Meyer and his gang put an end to the poultry war when a bomb went off at the house of Hassan France. He came to his senses and came to the table. The war was over. On August 27th, Meyer and his gang were brought in for questioning. Meyer was found with a loaded pistol and was charged with aggravated mischief and violating the Sullivan Act. He was held on $5,000 bail. Now, the papers say that in 1929, a gangster named one-armed Tony Magno had the slot machine racket in Brownsville sewed up. They also say that he was a partner with Abe Reles, and they were putting together a gang that would control Brownsville, and they asked Meyr and his boys to join, and Meyr declined. Now, you guys know I've done a lot of research on Abe, and I've never seen anything. I've read all the books and I've read all the articles. I've never seen anything about this. And doing some research, I found that one-armed Tony was a small-time local hood who only made the papers once. And Abe was in Sing Sing in 1929, so I don't know how true this is. But anyway, somebody had their slot machine stolen from locations all over Brownsville, Brooklyn at gunpoint. And the Shapiros found themselves with 75 slot machines that they put into establishments in the Catskills. At this time, Monticello, New York was claimed by Legs Diamond. Meyer struck a deal with Legs for $500 a week to operate in his area. This was a bold move. Someone was out of a lot of dough, and somebody had to pay. Payback came on May 7th, 1929. Meyer was with his brother and a few other friends at a vegetarian restaurant at Sutter Avenue and Tinsdale Street, when a man in a gray suit, hat, and overcoat, 5'11", 170 pounds, came in and said in a threatening tone, "I want to see you outside." Meyer stepped outside and shots rang out. Irvin ran outside to find his brother with 3 slugs in his left side. He was piled into a taxi and taken to the hospital, but it wasn't Meyer's time to go yet. On February 14th, 1930, Valentine's Day, Mrs. Kitty Raymond told police that Meyr assaulted her and tried to make her do immoral things. He was brought in and charged with white slavery, and he was held without bail. Around this time, Meyr had opened a few houses of ill repute, and this brought the money rolling in. He was able to open up a Shylock and put some money on the streets, and he continued his floating craps games, but his time was done. He just didn't know it yet. Okay, now we're up to the slot machine war. All right, Abe Reles is home. I covered the war in the first episode of Murder Incorporated. Go check it out. We'll wait for you. All right, you're back? All right. So, just in case you forgot, or you haven't seen it yet, I'll give you guys the quick rundown. In the summer of 1930, Abe Reles is back on the streets after 2 years in Sing Sing, and he has plans of being the biggest gangster in Brownsville. But he had to get rid of the Shapiros first, mainly Meyer. Abe set out to handle business. On June 3rd, 1930, Meyer was standing outside of a restaurant in East New York, probably holding one of his crap games, when 2 cars pulled up and shots rang out. Meyer went down with a bullet in the gut. His friend Samuel Thayer was grazed in the scalp, and another man, Lazar Elliott, an innocent bystander, was shot through the calf. Now, I'm not keeping count, but what's that, 6 times he was shot in the gut and stabbed once? This guy's like a supervillain or something. I don't know, my stomach hurts from just reading this. Even though the doctors told him he was going to die, he told the cops, "This is our affair. We don't want any police action. This is one of those things, we take care of ourselves." Thayer told the cop that it was all a big mistake. Him and 8 guys were just standing on the corner when a friendly argument broke out, and some of the friends pulled guns, playfully. And then, just in fun, one of the friends fired a shot that hit Meyer in the gut, and then another grazed my scalp. It was all in fun. Meyer, well, not Meyer, he was in the hospital, but 5 days later after Meyer was shot, someone flattened George DeFeo's tire while him, Abe, and Bugsy Goldstein were in the store. When they came outside the store to inspect the tire, shots rang out. Reles was shot in the back, Bugsy almost got his nose blown off, and George DeFeo didn't make it with a slug in the head. In the early hours of September 4th, 1930, Meyer went into the soda shop at 1535 Pitkin Avenue, owned by David Cohen. He looked around, went back outside, and had a few words with his man Samuel Cohen. Then he sent Samuel Cohen into the store. Meyer remained outside in the cab. A few minutes later, he noticed Pep Strauss walking to the soda shop. Meyer heard shots and took off in a taxi and joined his brother at the Democratic Social Club, leaving Samuel Cohen to be murdered by Pep. Meyer and Irvin were arrested at the home they shared with their family, but were released. On July 11, 1931, the Shapiros were returning from Monticello, New York, where they had attended the trial of one of their guys, Jack Siegel, who was facing an assault charge he got protecting the Shapiro slot machines up there. When they got back to Brownsville, they went right to the Central Democratic Club, where they played cards until 3 a.m. Meyer decided he wanted to spend the night at the Turkish Bath instead of the hot flat they shared with the rest of the family. Irvin said he would join him, but he wanted to go home and get some clean clothes. After dropping Meyer off, at the Turkish Bath, Smokey Epstein took Irvin to the family home at 691 Blake Street. Smokey waited outside while Irvin walked into the vestibule. Smokey heard and saw the flash of gunshots in the dark vestibule and two men running out and getting to a car and taking off. Smokey took off to get a cop. He returned to find Irvin dead with 9 bullets in him. Irvin was laid to rest like a real gangster. His brother attended the funeral. Despite being urged not to, he sat in the car with the family. Meyer was a target again that month when 2 carloads of gunmen opened up on him and his associates with pistols and a sawed-off shotgun. Abe Reles, Pep Strauss, and Frank Abindondo were arrested by the police after a brief chase. Next, it was Meyer's turn. He shot at Abe Reles on September 1st, 1931, outside of a pool hall. On September 11, 1931, Meyer Shapiro's body was found in a dilapidated tenement in Lower Manhattan, his favorite green suit torn and stained with blood. Autopsy showed he died from a single bullet to the back of the head. Now, at this time, Willie, the youngest Shapiro, was 18, and he had already started to run with a group of young hoodlums, and he was arrested on February 19, 1931, after a police officer saw Willie and a pal scaling a fire escape. The officer ordered them to stop, but they tried to escape. The officer fired a shot and Willie stopped, but his pal got away. Willie was charged with assault and disorderly conduct, but he was no threat to the combination, so they let him live for now. Everyone tried to steer young Willie in the right direction. Even the police would bring him in and warn him about the life he was choosing. But it didn't matter to Willie. He was determined to get back at the men who killed his brother. But the boys beat him to the punch. 3 years after Meyer and Irvin got their tickets punched, it was Willie's turn. On July 18, 1934, a combination associate came into Midnight Roses and told the boys he had just seen Willie Shapiro. Pep said, "Why don't we take him now and get him over with?" Now at this time, Abe was on trial for the assault of the garage attendant. You need to check Meyr Incorporated 1 for that story. And he was in court earlier that day. But the boys made time for Willie. Later that night, around 10:30, a 22-year-old mechanic named Sidney Weiss was taking a stroll on the flatlands in Canarsie, where the fresh creek comes in with the tide, when all of a sudden 4 men appeared from a sand pit. One of the men, described as tall and well-dressed, commented on the weather before the quartet hopped into a parked car and sped off. Weiss continued home, but something about the 4 men intrigued him. It was on his mind all night. The next day he gathered some kids from the neighborhood and they went to investigate. They went to where Weiss had seen the 4 men coming from, and they saw a suspicious mound and began to dig. They found the body of Willie Shapiro stuffed into a sack. The autopsy showed that Willie had been beaten so severely that nearly every bone in his body was broken before he was stuffed up with a clothesline around the neck and feet. The autopsy also shows that Willie had sand in his lungs, meaning that he was still alive when buried. Willie was buried again, this time for good, next to his brothers in the Mount Lebanon Cemetery in Queens. Now that, my friends, is the story of the Shapiro brothers, Irvin, Meyer, and Willie. I hope you enjoyed the story as much as I enjoyed telling it. Murder Incorporated Part 3 will be coming soon, so stay tuned. I'm still working on it. All right. If you want to make your bones, you got to whack that subscribe button. All right. You need to break that thumb. You need to ring that bell. Share the video. If you want to slide an envelope upstairs, the link is down below. All that YouTube stuff, you know you got to do. All right. This has been A Few Bad Men. Keep your nose clean and don't take any wooden nickels. I see yous in the funnies.